Hello and welcome to the Matt's Movie Reviews podcast. I am your host, Matthew Pejkovic. This is episode number 645. Available now on the Viaplay streaming service is Like Tears in the Rain, a documentary that delves into the life and career of Rutger Hauer, the late great star of such acclaimed films as Blade Runner and The Hitcher, whose legacy both on and off the screen left an undeniable mark on those who watched him and knew him, featuring never-before-seen footage, as well as interviews with the likes of Mickey Rourke, Whoopi Goldberg, and Robert Rodriguez. Like Tears in the Rain also marks the directorial debut of Sanna Fabery de Jonge, who I'm glad to say joins me now on the podcast. Sanna, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Like Tears in the Rain, this film is obviously a labor of love for you. You are the goddaughter of Rutger Hauer. There are, I'm sure, a lot of emotions that went into this project. Now that the film's out, it's been out for a couple of weeks now. What are the feelings like that this is out? These people are watching it. How does it feel like for you to know that this is something that you put together, not only for yourself and the fans of Rutger, but for Rutger himself?
Yeah, it feels great, of course. It has been a long process. I think with all films, it's always a little difficult to get the money together and to make it. So I think altogether it has been 4 years working on it. And I always wanted to make a tribute to him as a person. So it's a very personal film, and we don't really dive into all his movies specifically, but more as who he was, because he was always very private. Rutger and his wife were always very, by themselves and very private, didn't share a lot with people. So especially in the Netherlands, nobody really knew exactly who he was. And when I wanted to make this movie, of course, it was also a question for his wife. Is it okay if I'm going to make this? Because we're going to share a private side, actually, of him. And I think I could not have made this movie if Rutger was still alive, because he wouldn't, because he had no ego. So he would say, it's totally unnecessary. Why would you make a movie about me? I'm not that important. So I think we could have only made it now that he passed away. And that was also the feeling of his wife. And she was also now like, okay, this is a nice moment. And I would love to, that was, a few years after his passing, we would love to make a tribute to him. So I think his wife says that he would be very proud of me. So that makes me very happy, of course.
Is it correct that the initial idea for this came during his memorial? So from what I understand, 6 months after his passing,
Yeah.
Rutger's wife, Anneke, is
Ineke?
his wife's
Yeah.
name? She puts a memorial together. A lot of people there from both his personal life and career as well. You meet a lot of people, they talk to you about him, and through your interactions with so many people and the impact that he had in his life, that was pretty much the seeds, right, of what we've seen
Yes.
today in Viaplay.
Yeah, because I didn't thought about it before, because we were also, of course, grieving, and I knew always that he was a very special man. He was just an amazing, amazing human being, and he was so creative and so fun and very smart, an artist overall. He wrote poetry, so I knew that. But then at this memorial, people were speaking about him, and also they shared their stories they had with Rutger. And suddenly, I don't know, suddenly it clicked. I was like, oh my gosh, so there are so many people actually who really like this guy, or also had weird experience with him, because he could be a little odd sometimes as well. And he made such a huge impact on these people. So I was like, maybe I should do something with this, because he was, of course, the most famous actor we had in the Netherlands, and I knew he had a big career in America as well. And I knew I had all these 8mm footage. I thought, actually, I had that. I knew my dad had a few because he and Rutger they were best friends. They always filmed everything together on all our vacations and trips. So I knew my dad had some videotapes and 8mm. But I knew that Rutger filmed all his life, everything behind the scenes. On every film he did, he either filmed himself or he had like an assistant who filmed for him when he was too busy. So I was like, oh, there is this huge storage and he has all these films, so I can put something together. And then we found out that everything was destroyed in a flood. So his storage, where he kept all his material, was there, nothing was left. So it was a big trauma for him. Apparently, I didn't know that. So that was after his passing that I found out. And his wife said, yeah, he could never talk about it because he was so traumatized that all his work of all these years, like his first movies and TV shows, as soon as there was a camera, he bought one and was filming. So, and then everything was destroyed. So I was like, okay, how am I going to put together this documentary now? And then she said, well, take a look in the house, look at the attics, maybe you find something. And that's where I found another box with some leftover tapes, an 8mm roll, some videotapes, some sound tapes. And yeah, I had it converted and checked what was on it. And then everything together with the material my dad also had, we were able to make this film.
Rutger really seemed like a man before his years in that. So these days, and say maybe the last 10 years, the process of people documenting their lives through their devices, iPhones, iPads, what have you, is something that's very familiar. But back in like the 80s or the 90s even, having a camera on you all the time and documenting all these things, it seems like it would have been such a process back then because the technology was different, the cameras would have been bigger, the process of
Yeah.
putting tape to film and would have been something else. It's just such an interesting thing about a man who, on one end, we talk about he's incredibly personal with his life. He kept everything guarded, but at the same time, he documented his life in such a way as well. To me, it's such an interesting kind of dynamic there in the psychology of Rutger's life.
I think when he filmed, when we were on vacation, those were like family footage and that kind of things. But when he filmed, when he was working, it was more to process or to film actually the process of film. So he wanted actually to keep this material as a tool for students who wanted to make films. So he wanted to show this is how it works in real life. So you can learn everything in school, but this is how it goes. So that was his idea actually, to have it as a school material or student material or something like that. And he was actually always on top of the newest gadgets. So he bought those flip cameras, or he was always the newest of the newest he had. He was like a little boy. And so I think he didn't really film a lot of his personal feelings when he was on set. It was more of the process of filmmaking. And then, of course, the footage I used was more about his private life.
Yeah.
Because I didn't have that material anymore, behind the scenes. I didn't have that anymore. That was gone.
Yeah. The Matt's Movie Reviews YouTube channel is brought to you by TeePublic. TeePublic is the world's largest marketplace for independent creators to sell their work on the highest quality merchandise. With over 1.2 million designs, TeePublic is sure to have something you'll love. What was the process of editing like in regards to this film? You have all this footage, you have interviews, you have narrative elements as well. You got Rutger's thoughts and feelings, and you put it all together. You have two editors with you. How did you kind of map everything out here? Was it have a lot to do with I don't know, logistics, a lot to do with what you had to work with? How do you kind of approach that aspect of the film?
Well, it was also my first movie. So I was like, I used to be a producer and I used to be an agent. So I was always in film and television, but I never was the creator sitting there. So it was my first time. So I need a lot of help from the editors that I had to work with multiple editors. And the first one, just made like categorized everything in maps. So everything, what we did was everything he mentioned about, I don't know, filmmaking was in one map. Everything his wife said about him personally was in one map. So we put everything in maps to make sort of categories. And then it was a big puzzle, and it was also difficult sometimes because you are working, and sometimes it's for me it was like a personal process, because then you are struggling with something in the edit, and then you're watching one of Rutger's tapes that he is directly speaking to you in the camera, to audience, but at that moment it felt like he was saying it to me. So sometimes you had these weird moments, because he filmed also for a lot of, he did the Rutger Hauer Film Factory in Rotterdam. There was a lot of material from that. And that's where he inspired people to make movies and to just do it. And, don't be afraid, just start doing it. And that was some, positive information that I could use for myself, actually, when I was editing sometimes. Because it was my first time, I had to ask people a lot of questions. So how does this work? When I do this, what happens then? Or can we try this? And I also have to find my voice, of course, like what do I like? How do I want to make it? It was very interesting. And we just try to, I also had all the interviews printed out actually on paper. So I could read at home at night, like, okay, I need somebody to say something about this and this and this. And then I looked through the text, and then I found it, and then we tried it the next day. Like, okay, let's see if this works. So it was a lot, but I think we made a way to make it not stiff. I didn't want to make people only sitting behind a table or on a chair and talking. I wanted to make more of a flow in the whole movie. It had to feel also like a real film, actually.
Yeah, and I think you very much achieved that very much with this documentary. The thing that I take from Rutger, or there's a couple of things I take from watching the documentary. One of them is that I think something that really appeals to people about him, both as film watchers and people in his life, is that he was a man with dignity, which I think within a industry where, like Hollywood, or whether it be local film or what have you, can be very rare to find, I think, for a lot of people. But for a man like him, who was of the highest of fames, but he's so very grounded, so very there's a thing of truth about him. You're going to get what you're going to get.
Yes.
I think that some people might rub people the wrong way, but for me, I find that incredibly appealing, because there's nothing better than being able to talk to someone who's going to give it to you straight. And I think that shows a respect on his part to be able to just be plain spoken, not rude, just plain spoken. And I think that dignity, and I think that forwardness is something that appealed to a lot of people. Is that something that you found as well? And when talking to a lot of people in his life, that this man, who could have easily had the Hollywood disease go to his brain, absolutely refused to do that, because that's just not who he was as a person whatsoever.
No, exactly. And I think it made people either fell in love with him, or what you were saying, run for the hills. They were either scared of him being so honest and direct, or they just felt very comfortable and immediately had this click. So like with Robert Rodriguez, he told me we had this, he was from my tribe or something. They had this immediate connection, because what Robert Rodriguez did was something Rutger also liked. He made this, he made his own studio in Texas. Yeah. He built his own studio, and he's like, I'm going to make the movies I want to make, and then I hope I sell them, but this is what I want to do. That was also something Rutger really likes. He just wanted to do the things he thought were good and were good for him. He was never busy with, setting a path like career-wise, like I have to do this movie, and after that I have to do that movie, because that would be great for my career. He was never thinking about that. He always was very intuitive. Did he like the script? Did he like the director? Was it a young writer he wanted to help out? or it was like filmed in New Zealand. He was like, oh, fun, I've never been there, let's do that. You know, he was always very playful with that. And just instinct about Jason Eisner from Hobo with the Shotgun. He also said, yeah, he did a Zoom interview with Rutger, and immediately they had this click. And then Rutger was like, oh, I like this guy. I like his idea. Let's do it. Let's have some fun. So the people I interviewed were also a little different, I think, than the mainstream Hollywood people you would think of. They are all very unique.
Yeah.
And they are also all very true to themselves, and that's why I think he clicked with them. But there were also people who found him, like weird, or didn't understand his humor, or and his wife also says he was not chit-chatting or like social talk. If he liked you, he liked you. So you would know that. And otherwise, he wouldn't be rude, but he would also not really interact.
The Matt's Movie Reviews podcast is brought to you by Amazon Prime Video. One of the best on-demand streaming services available, Amazon Prime Video features exclusive Amazon originals as well as popular movies and TV shows. Watch Amazon Prime Video anytime, anywhere. The thing you said before with Robert Rodriguez and the whole tribe aspect, and you just touched on this, the people that were attracted to him, Paul Verhoeven, Mickey Rourke, Rodriguez, Whoopi Goldberg, a lot of these people are uncompromising individuals, and they made their own stage of which they're gonna live and die on. That's like their path they're gonna do, and there's no interference from anyone else. And I think that's something that really comes across with Rutger too, that sense of freedom. He had it when he was a child, jumping off, bridges into the rivers of near him. And then he has it as well when he was an adult. The documentary goes into tragedies in his life, people close to him, his brother-in-law, for example, his passing, and the effect that he had on him, and that we're here once. I'm going to make the most of this as I can, and I'm not going to compromise my values for anyone else, because the next day, and sure enough, he does pass on. But I like to think that when he did pass on, he thought to himself, I did it my way, and that's something that we can all take solace in.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was also a little bit for me a motivation to try and put that in the documentary, because I thought, like, if people could be a little bit more like Rutger, that would be really nice. If you don't really care too much about what other people are saying and just do the things you want to do. I was like, if I can get people some inspiration from this, I'm going to stick to my own plan. If everybody says don't do it, but I feel like I have to do it, maybe I just should do it. And the film had its premiere in the Netherlands at the Dutch Film Festival. And afterwards, people came to me and they were like, it did give them some inspiration, because they were like, oh, I wanted to buy this boat for so long, and now I'm just going to do it. Why am I waiting? I want to go into my camper and, travel for 2 months, and I'm putting it off for such a long time. And now I think, like, I just have to do all these things and don't care what anybody else is saying. So, that was typically something of him. And I think also the people who were, his friends. And when I was making this, I was like, oh, that would be nice if you get the feeling when you're done with the movie, like, yes, this is what I'm going to do as well. Just going to stay close to myself. And what I think is good, I'm just going to try and hang on to that.
The other great thing about this movie is that, to me, it's a love story between Rutger and Ineke. 50 years of marriage within, an industry where, for reasons it's none of my business, but it doesn't always work out for people. But they stuck together for 50 years because they knew who each other were. They had that same kind of morals, the same kind of outlooks on life. This movie doesn't happen without Ineke's okay, and her frankfulness and her open kind of like openness during the interview, I thought was incredibly touching because it really kind of cut to the core. I mean, no one would have known who this man was more than she did. And I
Yeah.
think she was fantastic in it. But yeah, there's a love story in the middle of this. I think people really need to take hold of, because I think a lot of times when it comes to, relationships, marriage, it comes to compromise and just knowing who you're going to be attached to. And I think they both just really knew who each other were. And it was kind of inspiring, exhilarating to see that and to
Oh,
hear about so how she spoke about him, you know, so lovingly. And I think that's a beautiful thing to watch.
yeah, yeah. I'm also glad that I'm of course I was so happy that she wanted to, help and make this movie as well, because that's what you're saying as well. I was like, I cannot do it without her, because they were so close and they were also giving each other freedom. They're both artists, and that's what she says in the movie as well. Like, I just let him go and be free, and that's why he always came back.
Mm.
And because of course there were also parts, when he had to shoot somewhere for 2 3 months and she couldn't come or whatever, but they tried to always find each other on set somewhere in the US or in the Netherlands, and they just had this enormous strong connection and love for each other. Yeah, so it's true, there is this big love story in the whole film as well. And that's
Um,
also tragic that in the end she is there, and she's now by herself, and that's very difficult, of course.
yeah, so I imagine it would be, of course. Um, you as his goddaughter, I'm curious, when was the first time you watched a Rutger Hauer film? When was the first time you actually saw him on screen?
That was actually a TV show. It was Flores.
Okay.
It was oh, there you it was a Dutch TV show where he was a knight, and he
Hmm.
was on his Paul Verhoeven made that show actually.
Yes.
Yeah, and he was a knight, and it was on Dutch television for a long time. So that was the first. But then I don't know. It was weird. I never really thought of him as an actor when I was young. I
Hmm.
knew he was an actor, but for me, he was just Rutger. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the click came later when I was more, I think, 10 or something, and then people were saying something to him on the street, and then I realized, like, oh yeah, okay, so he's sort of famous, but it was not until I was 10 or 11 that click came. So, but Flores was the first thing I saw of him.
Do you
Yeah,
have a favorite movie or role of his?
I'm a big romantic, so I love Lady Hawk.
Yeah.
I love one of those. Besides, of course, The Hitcher and Blade Runner, but that's I like, and I also really like The Legend of the Holy Drinker. I was very
Okay.
fascinated by that movie as well. I was so intrigued. I was like, oh, this is something totally different. It's a long time ago, but I remember when I saw that in the cinema, and I was like, wow, this is really special. Yeah.
I don't know if you ever seen the movie Blind Fury that he did. It's kind of
Yes.
like an action. I
Yeah. Also,
recently yeah, I recently did a video on that. And also what I like about that film, it's actually directed by an Australian. Philip Noyce directed that
oh
film.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, give my
So
cats try.
I was a big fan of that movie too. So now you have done this documentary, it's out, people watching it, and this is your first time as a director. Um,
Yes.
More films in the future as a director for yourself?
Yeah, I hope so. I'm working on again another. Yeah, this is like a documentary, half Dutch, half English. I have another project actually that came to me in the same sort of way, and I'm working on two things, but those are more like documentary series.
Hmm.
So yeah, I got the feeling now that I want to do this. I really liked it. I loved also doing the interviews. It was very nice. It was a great experience. So yeah, I'm working on a few things. Hopefully, I can make these. It's always difficult with film, but you never know. Yeah.
Well, I think you did a wonderful job. And for everyone out there listening, like Tears in Rain, the documentary on the life and career of Rutger Hauer via Play is where you can watch it. I'll have the link.
You can
go ahead.
You can watch it through Amazon Prime, actually, for I think in the US and the UK.
Okay. Excellent.
Yeah,
and I'll have all the links for that for everyone to watch, because I really recommend people watch this movie, because like as film fans, we all know him and we all enjoy these films, but to be able to get insight into the man like you done here, Sanna, is incredibly wonderful, and congratulations to you, and best of luck with the future with your continuing filmmaking career. I hope that this continues for you, and if you have another project, I'd love to talk to you again in the future. It's been a pleasure.
I will let you know. Thank you so much.
Thank you for watching the Matt's Movie Reviews channel. Please subscribe for more reviews, podcast interviews, and exclusive content.